Why does the gimbal do that, bro? It just tilted. He's asking right now for the video. The principal. It does it on purpose. I don't do it. Don't be on that for too long. No. Dude, the gimbals. Hold up, Ethan, get off my audio for a second. I gotta put my face.
Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to be here today. I wanted to begin by first introducing, we have some extremely important people who we want to introduce, but the first person I want to introduce is Isabella DeGrove. I've not seen Isabella for a couple of minutes now. Isabella, where are you?
She just stepped out.
Well, we're going to start talking about Isabella, and she'll be here in a moment. She just spoke to Channel 7 and Channel 4, and this is a big, big deal. So, Isabella is a current student here at the high school, taking a psychology course, and she was looking for ways that she could reach out to students your age, 6th and 7th grade students, and help them understand better the dangers of vaping. So she reached out to Dr. Nemi, and who happens to be the very first surgeon to successfully perform a double lung transplant upon a teenager with lungs injured due to vaping. He's going to tell you all kinds of amazing information about that. But I want to highlight Isabella here before we begin, because she did something that we as Seahawks and Marauders strive. Here comes Isabella right now. Isabella did something that we strive within our instruction and our learning to do. And that's to take our learning and our critical thinking, the things that we focus on in the classroom. But you have to realize that's only the first step. The second step is taking that and positively impacting our community and the people that live within it. And for that, we want to say thank you to Isabella. As I said, we have Dr. Nemi here from Henry Ford, who has, again, performed the first, it was just over the fall, just recently, the last few months. And he's going to tell you all about that. We're so excited to have him here because he has firsthand knowledge of the impact of the trauma and injury that e-cigarettes and vaping can cause on young lung tissue. So we're extremely excited to share that with you today. You know, we have 67th graders here because we want to make sure that, you know, that we can reach the students before you're influenced by peer pressure and then the addiction. However, if I'm talking to you and you're thinking that, oh no, I've already tried it, or oh no, maybe there's even already an addiction. Know that this right now is going to be the easiest time for you to stop. The longer it goes on, the longer that addiction, stronger addiction comes, and the more difficult it's going to be to stop. So hopefully this is going to be, hopefully for everyone, this is just information to never start. But if you have, this would be a day to stop. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Nemi, and thank you all for being such an amazing audience. I know you will be today. Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over here, so if you have any questions,
Well, thank you so much for hosting me. And thank you for coming this morning. I'm ecstatic to be among you here. And thank you for the kind introduction. So as you heard, I'm Hassan Nemi. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. Is this too close?
That's our the class just changed.
Okay. At Henry Ford Hospital in downtown Detroit, and I direct the heart and lung transplant program. Part of the reason I'm here is an invitation basically mediated by Isabella and the school to come here and talk to you, to bring to your awareness a problem that's happening in our society, and it's becoming bigger. Vaping and e-cigarette started appearing on the market in the United States in about 2007. And when they were first put out there, the promise was that they will help people who are addicted on cigarettes get rid of their addiction. And then the other promise was that they are a lot less harmful than cigarettes, so they don't disturb health, and they don't have the long-term effects of cigarettes like cancer and heart disease and so on. And the technology basically took on fire because a lot of people just started using it. And currently, vaping and e-cigarettes are the most commonly used form of nicotine. In addition to that, there was introduction of using drugs like the substance related to marijuana and other drugs, in addition to the different flavors that were put in the market, mint and bubblegum and very attractive flavors that mostly attract young users. The thing that we are aware of, first of all, the industry is not regulated, so we really don't know what's in these things in an open way. Many of these products contain nicotine, which is the main substance in cigarette smoke that make people addicted to the cigarettes. So it's a very highly addictive substance. And people seem to be becoming addicted to vaping the same way they get addicted to cigarettes. So it's not any more benign. And there is no evidence whatsoever that it really helps people quit cigarette smoking. The other thing that became more popular, a lot of people are obtaining the vaping juice or the cartridges from either black market sources or making the stuff at home and putting things in them that could potentially really have very, very nasty effects on the health of the lungs and the body in general. So over the course of time, as I was saying earlier, the use became more and more common, especially among people in your age group. The last set of statistics that I saw were scary, but I am certain they're not 100% accurate. I think they're underestimating the actual numbers. But it's estimated that 1 in every 4 senior high schoolers is vaping on a regular basis. And 1 in every 11 eighth graders are vaping on a regular basis. Be mindful of the fact that these numbers really are coming from people who are volunteering the information. So you know, as much as I know, that many people are denying it while they're doing it. So the fact of the matter, a lot of people are using, and it's a very dangerous addiction that we're facing at this point in time. Now, what motivated me to move on and be a public speaker in this regard is the fact that starting near the end of last spring of 2019, and it was started to be recognized in the area around Illinois and Wisconsin, that there were few reported cases of people who vape, and they're showing up in the hospitals with severe double lung injuries. Clearly, the majority of these folks improved with regular means, but the number of reported cases escalated, literally like an explosion over the course of a month or two. And then they were starting to see people who ended up dying from this exposure. So for us at Henry Ford, we weren't exposed to any actual patients up until a phone call we got in October about a young man who was a 16-year-old, an athlete, a swimmer, someone with aspirations to join the Army in the future and become somebody to save people and help this country and help the society, was admitted to a hospital in Detroit with lung injury that they feel that it was related to vaping by the progression of the story and by the admission of the patient. So the patient came in extremely short of breath, having fever, feeling miserable, nausea, vomiting. Was admitted to the hospital. He was started on antibiotics, and people were trying to help him out as much as possible. But despite all the interventions, all the medications, his lung function worsened over time. And over the course of a couple of weeks, he ended up needing to go on a ventilator, artificial ventilator with a tube down his throat to help him breathe because he couldn't breathe on his own. And despite this support, he continued to worsen, and his lungs became completely non-functional at a certain point in time, where even the ventilator wasn't good enough to support his life. So he had to be put on a special machine. We call it ECMO. It's just basically the first letters of extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, which in a simple way is a machine that takes the blood out of the body, puts oxygen in it, gets rid of the carbon dioxide, and put the blood back into the body to circulate. So basically it takes over the function of the lung. And that was the only way for him to stay alive, was putting him on this machine. Again, there was some hope that the process can be stopped with medications and reversed. But after several days of ECMO support, there was evidence that his lungs continued to worsen with time. And that was the time when we got the phone call at Henry Ford saying, are you guys willing to look at this poor patient and see if you can save his life with a lung transplant because his lungs are destroyed? So we got involved, and I went with my team to the hospital to transport him back. In order for us to transport him, we had to put him on an ECMO that's amenable, that's small size, that can allow us to move him to our hospital. I had to disconnect him from the ECMO for literally between 8 to 10 seconds. And during that time, that was long enough for him to crash because his own lungs were not able to sustain him. So we transported him to our hospital. And I brought in this picture with me. I want you to focus on this picture that's on your left. This is a picture of his lung. This is a picture of his lungs after transplant. And the reason I put this in here because this is how lungs should look like. They should have air space in there, and that's how we get oxygen, and we get to clean up the carbon dioxide out of our body. But his lungs, if you see here, you see some air in the airway only, but there is no air getting into the lung except in this small pocket. So the lung was completely destroyed. And this is what we were presented with. So after we moved him to our hospital, we had to go through a very complex evaluation process. I'm not going to bore you with that. And then once the decision was made, talking to his family and siblings and parents, we decided to go ahead and do lung transplant because that was the only way for him to survive. Otherwise, he was going to die for sure. So we were able to find him a pair of lungs that were suitable for him in terms of size. We did the operation. This is the result after the operation, and I'm very happy to report that he's recovering beautifully and going back to normal life. And he told us that he decided to become an ambassador to make you guys aware of the bad effects of a wrong decision and peer pressure that can harm your life and shorten your life or destroy it. And with that, they're not just destroying the student's life, but actually destroying the family's life and affecting the country because you guys are the future for this country. You are the generation of tomorrow. We want you healthy, we want you happy, and that's the main reason, the biggest motivation for me to be here. To talk to you this morning. A couple of things I want to bring up to your attention basically is that, number one, whoever tells you it's a benign intervention and doesn't hurt, it's a lie. It's not benign. It's addictive. It gets you hooked. You start using it, and then you become in need for the use to feel normal. So that's how it gets you stuck. It wastes your money, and as you can see, it potentially can kill you. So this is why I need you to be aware, should not respond to any kind of pressure to use these substances. And as you heard a little earlier, if you've done it, it's not a crime, but this is the time to stop because the longer you do it, the worse it gets. The addiction gets worse with time. So if you need help, you can reach out and seek help, because even people who got addicted, there are programs in the state, can be reached through the school that can help you come off the stuff. And the other message I'd like to leave you with, nothing that we take by mouth in terms of medications or drugs or substances or alcohol really solves our social problems. So if you're going through some tough time in your life for any reason, be it parents, be it school, be it friends, using substances is not going to take the problem away. They might make you numb for a short period of time where you don't feel the pain. But that's not going to solve your problem, because when you wake up, you're going to face the problem, and probably the problem will be even worse. So I do encourage you, especially at your young age, is to cope with stress by picking up something that you enjoy doing, be it a sport, a musical instrument, writing, poetry, some form of activity that becomes productive. It helps you grow, and it will help you to cope and find ways to improve your situation instead of resorting to things that are not going to solve your problem. So for the most part, the epidemic that we faced starting in the spring showed a lot of rise in number of people who got hurt and died up until about September, October, where it reached the peak, and this is the time where our patient presented. And then it seems like the number of cases are decreasing now. They're still being reported, because as of 10 days ago, I got an email from someone telling me that a 15-year-old student who vaped for about a month only, a few times, died in Texas from lung injury. So they could not save his life. So people are still getting hurt with this stuff. And the feeling is, for the most part, and I need to share some of this information with you, the majority of those reported cases where lung injury happened were substances or vape juices that were obtained either from friends or black market or things of this nature. So be wary. Don't use things that you have no idea what they have. And the vaping device itself, all forms. I know there are many shapes. Some of them look like a cigarette, and some of them look like cartridges, and some of them look like a thumb drive. All these things have the same principle. They're battery-operated heating wires and a vape juice. So basically, the juice comes to the wire when it's hot, it hits it, it becomes aerosolized in very, very small particles at very high concentration, and this when people inhale that, very high concentration. The particles are so small, they are able to reach the very, very far end of the lung. So they effectively reach every corner in your lung, every corner. And with that, if there is anything toxic in there, this is a very good method to deliver the toxin to where they can really inflict most damage on the lungs. And the thing, I don't mean to be graphic this morning and scare you, but I need you to be aware of what I saw when I did the lung transplant, and I took the old lungs from my patient out of the chest to put the new lungs in to save his life. I've been doing lung transplants for almost 20 years, and I have not ever in my life seen anything uglier than what I saw that day. We put the picture, I don't know if it's projecting well here, but this picture up here is really the left lung of my patient, and I'm holding it in my hands during surgery when I took it out of the chest. A normal lung, when you disconnect it, it becomes very small and very light, and it collapses in your hands, literally like a piece of cloth. This lung was disconnected, and as you can see, it's just staying in full shape as if somebody inflated it with air. I had quite a bit of difficult time, despite a very big cut that I made on his chest. I could barely deliver it through the cut to take it out. And this lung was literally solid, like when you feel the truck tires, you know, the rubber on the truck tires, how firm it feels. This is the way this lung felt. And when we did the microscopic examination on it, the shocking part was the airway itself was not damaged at all, as if nothing happened. It looked normal. But the lung tissue itself got completely destroyed. So the small sacs that are supposed to fill with air and do the gas exchange were completely destroyed and obliterated. They did not exist. They were replaced completely by scar tissue. And even the lymph nodes inside this lung had dead areas in them the same way as the lung did. And here, again, the picture is probably not doing it enough justice. But in the top part here of the lung, you see areas that are dark black, and it's basically dead lung tissue. So this substance injured the lung, injured it partially, and despite the fact that the patient was not using any more, clearly he's in the hospital, he's not getting exposed to more toxins, the reaction continued to destroy his lung over the course of a month afterwards. So by stopping, it doesn't mean that the effect went away. Apparently the reaction started and the lung continued to get destroyed for a period of a month afterwards to get us to this picture and that picture up there. So with that, I think, that brings me to the end of what I want to tell you. And I really like to open the stage at this point to see if any of you guys have a question that I can answer for you. Go ahead.
Isn't there also a chance that when someone is vaping that it can also, it can overheat and explode?
I didn't hear you all that well. Can you speak a little louder? I'm sorry.
Isn't there a chance that when someone's vaping that it can overheat and explode?
I've heard of that, but I'm not sure about how it could happen, because it should be battery powered and it should be kind of not a very high heat, but who knows what's inside the cartridge? Depends on the vape juice. If it's something flammable, sure. Anybody else? Go ahead. It's a very good question. So the question was, for people who didn't hear it, is there a time between starting to vape and getting the injury? And the answer to that is, with this kind of injury, we don't know any time frame, because we've seen people get hurt after using only a few times. Because basically this injury is coming not from the dose or the exposure, it's coming from the fact that this substance is so toxic it induces injury in the lung and it goes on. So some people who got hurt were using it for a couple of years, and from what I heard, that the child who died in Texas was using it for less than a month. Go ahead.
Dr. Nemi, we have one right over here.
Okay.
How many people have died from vaping?
How many people?
Like how many people in the last year have died?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Ask it one more time.
How many people did what?
How many people have died from vaping in the past year?
Okay, well, up until the last time I looked, there were about 60 confirmed deaths from vaping with this kind of injury.
Excuse me. Sit up.
In the United States. And just, before that, up until May, nobody was reported.
Okay.
Does vaping, can vaping often be a gateway to more like harmful chemicals?
The question, Dr. Nemi, is can vaping sometimes be a gateway into other harsher chemicals or drugs?
Absolutely. I mean, any kind of addiction can lead to other addictions. So starting with nicotine, people can move to THC, can move to marijuana, can move to other products. And people are using it in a very nasty, when I say the word creative here, it's not a positive creative, in a nasty creative way, to use a lot of other substances. So yes, people can start with something and ruin their life with moving to more harsh things. Absolutely.
How long does it take for the vaping to like affect your lungs?
Again, I mean, the longer you use it, the worse it gets, but some of these injuries are happening after only a month or two of use.
Hold it. Talk into it.
Does vaping age you faster? No.
It's a very good question. And the answer to that is yes, in the sense because it will affect your system. Now we're starting to recognize that it has bad effects on the heart. It has bad effects on the body in general, so it does shorten your lifespan. So in other words, yes, it ages you.
When you're vaping, like, can your lungs shrivel up inside your body?
Well, that's what practically happened to our patient. Yes.
Okay. Dr. Nemi, how many more questions would you like to take?
Whatever the time allows.
Oh, all right. Well, there we go. Alexis, talk nice enough. Folks, the quieter you are, the easier it'll be for Dr. Nemi to hear the questions. Thank you.
I know that some teens use the vape for the flavor. Do you think that if there was not a good flavor, that some teens would stop using it?
Well, stop using it is the smartest thing to do because the flavors are all artificial. A lot of the flavored substances have nicotine in them, so they can get you addicted. And I know they're trying to make it attractive by making it nice flavors to attract, especially the kids. So stopping to use is my only advice to you this morning. That's the only message. It's just either don't use it at all. The easiest thing is not to start, because once you start, it becomes a difficult thing to stop. So the easiest thing in the world is don't start. That's my message for you this morning.
Nice and loud.
Are vapes worse than cigarettes themselves?
Well, it's an excellent question too, because that question comes up very frequently. Okay, cigarettes and vapes have different kind of effects on the body. Vaping does not have the combustion or the burning products that cigarettes have that gives people cancer and other things. But clearly vapes have other effects that cigarettes don't do, because I haven't seen a single patient who gets that bad from cigarettes. So they're different. They hurt you in a different way.
When you get a lung transplant, where do the new lungs come from?
That's an excellent question too. So normally the new lungs come from someone who sustained a brain injury from either a car accident or a gunshot wound or something of this nature. And their brain is so damaged to the point that they do not have a chance to live a normal life, which means they're brain dead. And that's the time when, people are approached to donate the viable organs to help other people survive.
What is the government doing to help stop vaping and smoking?
Beautiful question. Thank you for that. So there are a lot of programs, starting at our small level of the state of Michigan. There is effort to stop all the flavored vapes from being in the market, to ban them, make them illegal. There is an effort that we heard also in the last couple of months in the White House. There is a push to stop the flavored vapes. There are a few programs that are trying to stop the marketing to young kids in particular, and to bring to public attention the ill effects of vaping so people are aware of that. So there are steps happening now. I expected action a little earlier, but it's never too late. They're working on it.
All right, Lola, nice and loud.
If someone's near you is vaping, can you get addicted to nicotine secondhand?
I don't have enough information to answer this with certainty, but I would imagine that secondhand effect of vaping would be probably similar to regular cigarettes.
Damage your lungs a lot. So even if you vape one time, can it still damage your lungs really bad?
It potentially can if you use a substance similar to what happened to this patient of ours, but again, most people don't get hurt from one use. They use it a little and they get comfortable and then they get addicted and they use more. So the majority of people are getting hurt from using it repeatedly.
Can it make the vape
Nice and loud.
If you get like a certain disease, can it make like the effects of vaping worse?
You mean vaping make other diseases worse?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there are effects on the heart and vascular system, as well as the ill effect that we know about the lungs.
Braylon, what's your question?
So how many people have you done a lung transplant on?
For vaping, that's the only patient. But we do a lot of lung transplants for other illnesses.
Vape has killed the most people. Like, are they all the same?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ask if all the vapes are the same.
Are all vapes the same?
They're not. I mean, there are a lot of substances out there available. We feel that most of them will end up being harmful, but there are things that are more harmful than others. So they're not the same, especially the vapes that are obtained from the black market. They're probably more harmful to your body than other kind of vapes.
Can vaping hurt any other part of your body?
Can it hurt what? I'm sorry, what was the last part?
The question was, can vaping hurt other parts of your body?
It can hurt the heart and the vascular system, not just the lungs. But again, you have to remember that it has been around only for about 10, 12 years. So we don't know the long-term effects of it yet.
So at what age are kids normally pressured into vaping?
I've heard of people starting to vape as soon as the 5th grade from peer pressure.
What's your question? All right, Seahawks, that was a super surprising answer, and even more important as to why you're sitting here receiving this presentation.
Okay, so what happens if the lung transplant doesn't work?
Well, basically, it means the patient will die.
Lauren, what's your question? Okay, but don't laugh.
What was the biggest obstacle you faced while completing the lung transplant?
That's a great question, Lauren.
For this particular case?
Yes.
Okay, well, the difficulty happened basically from a decision-making process. First of all, the patient was very ill. And operating on sicker patients makes the operation more dangerous. That's number one. Number two, also, when someone comes to us to have an organ transplant, we normally don't transplant people who are addicted on substances. We deny them transplant. So we usually ask people to go home, quit, and show us that they quit for at least 6 months before we even think about offering the organ. In here was the biggest difficulty, the biggest challenge for me from an ethical standpoint. I didn't make the decision by myself, it's a whole team. It involves psychologists and other healthcare workers. Our biggest difficulty was, this is a 16-year-old, so basically it's a child, juvenile age. And he had absolutely no chance to quit, because if we were to ask him to quit, he was practically going to die. He had no choice. The only way to keep him alive was to transplant him. So we had to go through a very difficult set of conversations among us, with the family, with the peers, with the parents, to get to this decision. And we really had to bend the rules a little bit to get him saved. And I'm glad we did this, because he turned out to be an outstanding young man who's really cashing in on it, and he's taking it to make something good out of this miserable experience.
So if you still know nicotine vape, can you still get harmed?
Can you repeat that, please?
If you know nicotine vape, can you still get harmed?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It's probably not the same thing as here, but the long-term effects of nicotine vaping are not very clear to us yet. There is clear effect of the heart and vascular system.
I think that was asked
And
already.
I think it's very damaging. It's not a benign intervention.
Carter, which question?
Can they feel like lose or gain weight or something like that?
Does it have other effects?
Does vaping like have other effects like gaining weight or like something like that? Heart failure?
So he's wondering if vaping has other effects, possibly like gaining weight or any other side effects like that.
Nothing that we know of at this point in time.
Nice and loud.
If you took the nicotine out of the actual vape tool, is there still any other toxic chemicals in it?
That's an excellent question, actually. There are a lot of chemicals involved with the e-cigarettes and the vapes. And even the wire itself carries some metal that can be potentially toxic to the lungs. So there are a lot of substances that inflame the lung, a lot of substances that produce inflammation in the body. And we haven't seen the actual effects of this. I want to tell you guys, you probably don't know this, but people started smoking regular cigarettes in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it took us almost 70 years to recognize the ill effect of cigarettes on health. And it might take us the same length of time to recognize the ill effects of vaping. So we don't know all the side effects of that.
Okay, nice and loud. Hold it right to your mouth.
How do you match a donor?
Very nice question also. We have to go by the blood group. It has to be the same blood group so they don't reject. And also we have to match the body size. So you can't take a big lung, put it in a small guy, or vice versa. So we look at the size within range, and we look also at the blood group matching.
All right, Dr. Nemi, I have one more question for you. It comes from myself. What is the change in life expectancy for someone who has received a double lung transplant?
Another excellent question. So double lung transplant survival, on average, we measure it by, we call it average survival, which means 50% of the patients are expected to be alive and well in about 8 years. The other 50% don't get there. So only the very, very lucky few who are beyond 10 years after lung transplant. And this is very important to know. So this is not a cure. Lung transplant was a life-saving intervention. Without it, my patient would be dead. But on the flip side of this, he will not have the normal life expectancy that he was destined to have if he never touched the vapes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, you've been awesome.
Dr. Nemi, on behalf of our entire Seahawk student population, our staff, and the many students who will be able to view this presentation in the high school and middle school, we want to thank you. Thank you for not only bringing your expertise on this subject matter and your world-renowned double lung transplant on this vaping student, but connecting it to the lives of our students here. The students who face challenges like this through peer pressure too often, and providing them information that'll help them make better choices in the future. So one more time, Seahawks, a nice round of applause for Dr. Nemi. Dr. Nemi, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is the really good work that does it.
All right, teachers, at this time, you can go ahead and start beginning to take your classes back to the middle school.
What a great assembly.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was telling Tammy in the back, I said, you know,